Your jamming skills will improve more rapidly if you know what songs to expect when you show up for your local bluegrass jam. In this past video, I went over the most common bluegrass vocal tunes you could expect to hear. In this current video, we will go over the most common instrumentals that you are likely to hear. We will also give you tips on how to learn more instrumental tunes in a shorter period of time. Let's begin with an entry-level tune and work our way up to more difficult songs. Boil 'em Cabbage Down is an easy tune that most people learn early in their bluegrass journey. You probably aren't going to hear it at a local jam because people say, oh, that's too beginnerish, but we can use it to demonstrate the things that you should look for in instrumental songs. First off, you'll need to agree on what key a song will be performed in. Boil 'em Cabbage is learned on the mandolin and the fiddle in the key of A. Banjo players, guitar players, and dobro players most likely learn the song in the key of G, so they will need to put a capo at their second fret to get the pitch up to the key of A. You'll want to remember that even though you learn a solo to a song, most of the time you'll be playing rhythm. If you have a circle of 8 to 10 people, you'll get to play your solo, and then it's going to go around to each of them and they'll play their solo. So you'll need to know the chords to each song that you learn a melody to. Very important. Here are the chords in the key of G since I've got my capo on for the guitar. Here they are in the key of A for the mandolins and fiddles. Notice that it didn't matter which key you were thinking in, G or A, you only needed to know the 3 main chords in that key. So that's a tip right there when you're first trying to get out and jam with others, especially if you're in one of the many popular slow jams going on around the country. Try to pick songs where the rhythm players only have to deal with 3 or maybe even only 2 chords. Here's the list of tunes where all of the songs can be played with just 2 or 3 chords. A few popular instrumental tunes do also have lyrics. In that case, you want to follow what you would be doing as if somebody was singing the song. So in Boil 'em Cabbage Down, that would mean that the verse and the chorus has the exact same melody. So each person going around the circle would play it twice, once for the verse, once for the chorus. So if you just have the one solo worked out, you would simply repeat it. Be sure to play it twice before it gets passed around. You want to have that similarity so each person knows how much to play before they pass it on. If a more advanced picker is in your jam, then he or she will decide to play some variations instead of sticking to the exact same solo when they repeat it. Many of the tunes performed at jams are what you call fiddle tunes, meaning that they most likely were composed on a fiddle. They have a real specific structure. Most of them will have 2 different parts. We simply label those A and B, and each part typically has 8 measures. All of these popular bluegrass jam tunes follow the fiddle tune format. I personally try to help my students early on learn a lot of common fiddle tunes. To do this, I'll show them a very basic version of the song. It's not time efficient to go out and try to find the fanciest version that you hear somebody play because it'll take you a long time to learn just that one song. If you learn basic versions, you can learn a whole bunch of songs and then later on go back and fancy them up. I'll give you an example of this process with the song Blackberry Blossom. Here are the chords. You can see it's a standard fiddle tune. 2 8-measure sections, each getting repeated. The melody that you commonly hear is something like, well, that's a lot of notes. It's wall-to-wall 8th notes if you're counting in 4/4 time, 8 16th notes in a 2/4 measure if you're counting that way. So what I like to show my students is, well, what's really going on here is the melody is simply moving down the major scale with a bunch of other notes filled in around that. Once you realize that, you can just play that simple melody going down the scale, maybe fancy up those single notes and give it a little what we call bum ditty, which would be, for the pickers, would be down, down, up. That simple little solo right there is going to work for Blackberry Blossom. You'll be able to learn it, get in there, and be playing the song. When banjo players go to find a recording of Blackberry Blossom, they often hear a player playing it in what's called the melodic style. So that's fine, but that's a lot of work to learn how to do that. If you're not ready for that, you can simply play off the chords. Here's the chords. I'm just going to use a simple forward-backward roll. Again, that will get the job done. You'll learn the song much quicker, move on, learn more songs, have more fun at the jam. At this point, I'd like to take a second to mention that I put together a series of books that teach these songs right in this format. So what I have is on the left-facing page, the very simple version that I just discussed, and on the right side, a more intermediate version. So take the time to learn this one quickly, and when you're ready, add some more notes over here. So I have that for fiddle, mandolin, and banjo. Should you be interested, just see the details in the video description. Banjo players will need to realize that many of the fiddle tunes that get performed by a mandolin or a fiddle are composed in the key of D. So you'll want to learn how to play in D, your three main chords being D, G, and A. And you might decide to tune your fifth string up to A, which blends in with that D chord better. Your other option would be to put on your capo and again have your fifth string spiked up 2 frets and play what looks like a C chord, but that's going to sound like a D chord. For the remainder of this video, I'd like to go over some little tricky nuances that show up in some of the real popular songs. Starting off here with Ralph Stanley's song called Clinch Mountain Backstep. The little 5 there is to remind players that it sounds better if you know how to play what's called a modal version of the chord, where you leave out the third. So you just have root and fifths. Rings like that instead of hearing that third in there. Makes for interesting sounds when the notes being played over it are kind of bluesy, as they are in Clinch Mountain Backstep. So here they are in the key of A as well. Another thing you'll notice about Clinch Mountain Backstep is in part B, there's 2 extra beats there on the 1 chord before it goes to the 5 chord. Dun, 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 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes you hear people at the jams, to help keep everybody together, kind of pound 2 beats on that 5 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, bam, 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 diddle dun, diddle dun, dun, dun. Here's a song you'll want to watch out for, Cherokee Shuffle. Notice that the B part has 10 measures before it repeats. So you'll feel that it's a little bit longer before the next person gets it because of that. Another thing I caution jammers about is don't play 2 songs back to back that are very similar to one another. An example of this is the song Salt Creek and the song Red Hair Boy. They're both in the key of A, and they both have a D chord right in the middle of the second measure, and they both have a G chord there. This melody is very similar, you'll hear it. Here's Salt Creek, and so there's that D melody note halfway through the second measure, and then here's a G note. G is an unusual note in the key of A. So those 2 things, that's Salt Creek. Here's the Red Hair Boy. There's the D note halfway through. There's the G note. So I guarantee you, if you go ahead and play that right after somebody called off Salt Creek, before you know it, you'll be back to playing Salt Creek. So just put a little space between them, put another song in there. One thing I caution against is picking a song that is instrument specific. That's a great song by Earl Scruggs, but it's mostly learned by banjo players. So try to pick a song that you know other instruments have had a fighting chance to learn. Here's a list of tunes mostly learned on a specific instrument in a specific key. They'd be ones that you want to sort of stay away from in your early stages of your learning. Obviously, if you're hanging around with more advanced players, sure, they would like to tackle them on any instrument. We mentioned in the vocals video that you try to avoid what's known as jam busters. Those are songs that are just seemingly too hard for the average person to try to follow along. Bill Monroe was famous for writing jam busters. Here's a couple of his tunes. And here's the chords to Jerusalem Ridge. Look at how there are 4 different parts. There's places where there's only 2 beats that you'd have to count. So unless you are playing with super advanced players, and you are one yourself, these are tunes you'd like to avoid. It's always good, if you're deciding to call off a tune, to survey all the people in the jam, see how many will be able to solo on it. If it's only 2 or 3 out of 10 people in a jam, then try to pick another song off your list. So these are songs that I know to be a little more difficult to learn. Therefore, you may want to put off on learning these until you've got a few of the more simple songs mastered. As you attend various jams, you'll find that some rely more heavily on vocal tunes, some more on instrumentals. Hopefully the tips in both of these videos are helping you be more prepared for your experience. Here's a list of instrumental tunes I suggest my students learn fairly early on so that they can more readily participate in the local jam. As always, dig in, have fun, and keep on picking.